Welcome students in our today's online lecture. Our today's topic is a poem, Going, written by Philip Larkin. This poem is prescribed in BA Part 2nd, Paper 1st of English Literature, MGSU Bikaner. So before moving ahead, let's have a brief introduction of our today's poet, Philip Larkin. His full name is Philip Arthur Larkin. He was born in 1922 and died in Coventry, Warwickshire, England, and died in 1985 in England. He was the most representative and highly regarded modern poets who gave expression to anti-romantic sensibility prevalent in English verse in the 1950s. And Larkin was educated at the University of Oxford on a scholarship, and he was also known as a novelist, and his first novel was Jill, which was published in 1946, and his another novel entitled A Girl in Winter, which was published in 1947. He became well known with his work The Less Deceived in 1955. It is actually a volume of verse, the title of which suggests Larkin's reaction and that of other British writers who then came into notice, like Kingsley Amis, John Wayne, against the political enthusiasm of the 1930s, and what they saw as the emotional excesses of the poetry of the 40s. His own verse is not without emotion, but it tends to be understated. Larkin became librarian at the University of Hull in Yorkshire in 1955, and he was a jazz critic for the Daily Telegraph during 1961 to 71, from which occupation were gleaned the essays also entitled All What Jazz. The Whitsun Weddings, which was published in 1964, and High Windows, which was published in 1974, are his later volumes of poetry. He also edited the Oxford Book of 20th Century English Verse in 1973, and Required Writing, which was published in 1987, is a collection of his miscellaneous essays. So this is all about the poet. Now coming to our today's text, the poem Going was actually published in 1955 in his volume The Less Deceived, which was published in 1955. So here the speaker, the poet, is talking about going. So actually in the whole poem, this is a very short 10 lines poem, and without mentioning the death by its name, here the poets actually refers it to as a kind of going. So in this whole poem, he explores the theme of death without even referring it. And in the very beginning of this poem, he is talking about a kind of approaching evening. So we will see in our text. Here we are. There is an evening coming in across the fields, one never seen before, that lights no lamps. Silken it seems at a distance, yet when it is drawn up over the knees and breast, it brings no comfort. Where has the tree gone that looked up to the sky? What is under my hands that I cannot feel? What loads my hands down? So, going poem is a short 10 lines poem that is separated into three sets of 3 lines and one final single line. These lines are very these lines vary greatly in length and do not maintain any kind of rhyme scheme. So the poem actually, the poet here he talks about approaching evening and the approaching the evening which is coming across the fields, and he says that this evening is coming across the fields, and that evening is one has never seen in his life, in his or her life before, and that evening also there is no lights, there is no lamp. In the first 3 lines of this poem, the speaker actually begins by stating that in the distance there is an evening coming. It is far off at this point, but still within one's line of a sight. Across the fields there is evening which is coming, means it can also be suggestive of the last phase of human being's life, that is old age, when human being is very close to his or her death, his or her approaching death. So it may denote the coming of death also. So he is also saying that one never seen before that lights no lamps. So this evening, it does not mean that it cannot be seen or it cannot be understood. Actually, here this approaching evening becomes a symbol for death, in a death of man's life, because death is an inevitable truth which individual has to face at some point of time during his life, of his or her life. So, and how does this evening looks like? He is saying that there is no light. So it means that there is a kind of darkness which is prevailed all through, and that darkness also suggests that there is no hope during this time, and something inevitable which the speaker or the poet he has to face, he has to accept. There is no hope, there is no light. And how does it look? This is also has been expressed by the poet in the next lines when he says, Silken it seems at a distance. So in the next these three lines, uh, here the poet also begins another description with another description of that evening, how this evening looks like from a distance. It seems to be silken, as if it is a vogue experience that could possibly bring comfort like a seat. But when it is drawn up over the knees and breast, it brings no comfort. So, when this evening comes nearer, or it comes nearer, then it brings no comfort. So, as one ages, it becomes clear that this is not the case. Eventually, the seat of death, okay, here the seat of death is drawn up over the knees as it progresses over the breast and consumes one person's entirely. So, then he finds that there is no comfort to be found in this darkness, in the darkness, or as the speaker stated in the first lines, that there is no light. So this does not bring any kind of comfort to the poet or to the human being. Where has the tree gone that looked earth to the sky? So in the last these lines, where the poet actually asks a series of questions, he asks that it seems that here the poet or the speaker seems to interrogate the reader. He wants to get answer from the reader that he is in an entirely different state of mind. So when he asks, where has the tree gone that looked up to the sky? So these lines suggest that there used to be a connection in his life between the ground or solid human life and the ephemeral afterlife. So when the tree here represents one's continuous presence on the earth, and its disappearance in the form of cutting of the tree, it also signals one's impending departure. Means after cutting the tree, the he it suggests that he also has to disappear at some point of time. And in these last lines he refers that whenever his own life, the entirety of his experience, or just death itself, he is unable to move. What loads my hands down? When death comes, he becomes totally unable to move his own hand, or his hands, which were the extension of his own consciousness, have become paralyzed. So a reader here may take the note of the fact that this piece ends with this single line. It suggests very significant meaning here, and it is the only line in the entire poem that meanings at an even greater amount of attention which need to be paid here. So the final question, when the poet asks, what loads my hands down, it gets a biggest question. One might wonder about death. He is asking what death actually is, how it works, and incidentally how he is supposed to deal with it. There is no answer to this question as at this point his connection to earth has been cut, and he is on his own journey into the dark evening, and that going is actually his own going in the form of his physical departure from this worldly life. So in the whole poem we can derive here so many things like time, death, chance, and so these major things can be identified in Larkin's poetry. And here we find that poet depicts the coming of an evening, that part of the day that proclaims its dooms, and he also says that from distance this evening seems silken, but when it arrives it brings no comfort. So that growing age is the evening time, which makes even the firmly rooted tree, like when the tree here suggests that metaphorically that the young age of the poet, when he was young, more energetic and more dynamic human being, but at present when he becomes old during his evening time, means his last age, during his old age, all those things get fed away. So it also says that man falls prey to the texture of time and finds himself helpless. At this point of time, he becomes totally helpless, and the poet perceives that the old age as evening which causes the lamps to burn. The old age, however, does not lead towards enlightenment. From a distance, the evening that seems pleasantly smooth, silken, soft, but after having reached nearer, it gives no feelings of comfort to the poet or to human being for that matter. After the evening or night descends, in other words, death follows the old age, and the man who connected the earth to the sky, that is the man who infused energy into the every aspect of life, suddenly disappears. So this call of death makes everyone helpless, and this call of death is inevitable in each and every human being's life. The active body organs also become still and stagnant, so he cannot move his hands. The poem is remarkable for its metaphorical quality. So this is the whole gist of this poem. So I hope you have understood, students, and we will meet in our next lecture. Thank you.